want to start off by asking you a very serious question to begin with. Do you think that the human species has evolved to this far on the planet just to figure out how to pay down credit card debt? Don't we know there's something more for us, that there's something calling us, that there's an innate mandate in each of us to live our gifts, to follow our dreams, to live that passion? And so that's what I want to talk to you about, because Abraham Maslow said that all that you can be, you must be. All that you can be, you must be. That's how we come to peace, is to be what we must be. And so the problem, though, is that there's no external rule book for this, right? You know, there's no external rule book for how to bring out your genius, how to bring out your passion, because you've never been here before, right? You've never been here before. You have a strand of genius in you. And so you do have an inner voice, an inspired inner voice that can lead you moment by moment into your genius and into the realization of your dreams. So what I want to ask you is, what stops us from following that inspired voice? Are you going to listen to your conventional wisdom, the things that we've been told, predictable wisdom, or do we follow what's inside us, that inspired voice that's never been here before? So that's what we're going to talk about, right? So here's one thing that I know that stops us from living our following that inspired voice. If you're not listening to yourself, you're listening to someone else, right? If you're not listening to yourself, who are you listening to? You know, if you're not following your magic, your dreams, your passion, then you're probably listening to the voice of the culture, the voice of society, the voice of a parent. I listened to my mother. I knew early on that I wanted to write. That's what did it for me. I took creative writing in high school English, and I was so excited by it. It was so cool. I loved writing. And then the creative writing teacher was gorgeous. So that was like, oh my God, it's a sign. This is like so what I'm supposed to do, right? You know, and so I went home to share this fabulous news with my family that I'd found my calling. Only I grew up in a Brooklyn, New York, Orthodox Jewish family. And so if you said you want to be a writer, this wasn't necessarily good news, right? So my mother said something like, you're going to write? You're going to write? You're going to starve, you're going to write. And that was the go for your dreams talk. Pretty much, you know. And then my mother, being a rational woman, said something like, what, you can't get a job, you'll write on Sundays, right? You know, the rational plan. And most of us got that same rational plan, didn't we? Don't follow what you love, don't follow what excites you, don't follow what moves you. Stay safe, be practical, be reasonable, right? And so I did that. I went off to law school, and I got accepted to Harvard Law School. And I graduated with honors from Harvard Law School. And as you might imagine, my mother was very, very proud, right? She was bragging in every synagogue for all she was worth. You know, "I'm my little girl, I don't want to tell you. Let me tell you." You know, so she was proud. I started practicing law. I was on partnership track, and I started making money, having the things that you're supposed to have, the success you're supposed to have, and I felt empty. I felt barren. I felt bitter because I wasn't following this inner mandate that I believe we all have to be what we're meant to be, right? The way that we find peace. And so, thank God, a friend of mine at the time knew that I wanted to be a writer, and he said something amazing. He said, "Tam, think about it. If you've been this successful doing something you don't love, what could you do with what you love?" Right? And so that did it for me. I thought, my God, you get one life. You know, I want to know what's going to happen. And so I left the practice of law, and I decided, I want to try writing at least. So the other thing I know that stops us from following that inspired voice within us is that it's not a one-time deal. It's not like you get the inspiration and you're good to go. You know, it's just that one-time thing, right? For most of us, we're going to hit challenges. We're going to hit obstacles. And then there's going to be what I call these choice points. And in these choice points, it's going to be, do I listen to my love or do I listen to fear? Do I listen to love or do I listen to fear? Do I listen to genius? Do I listen to the inspired voice in me or do I listen to what's familiar, what's predictable, right? So I started writing and I'm writing and I realized I want to write a book. And it ends up taking me about 12 years to write this book. I had no idea it would take that long. And I start coaching on the side, and I'm teaching workshops on the side to support myself. But I don't have an agent, and I don't have a contract. I don't have a publisher. I have a dream. I have this inner voice. I'm all excited. And one day, I walk into this bookstore, and there is a brand new book on exactly my topic. And it's written by a famous author, it's got 1 million endorsements, and I just have this meltdown, this total meltdown. And fortunately, I'm in the self-help section, so that was okay, in the bookstore. So that, I had company at least, right, and so I have this meltdown like, oh my God, you're listening to an inner voice? Hitler listened to an inner voice. Probably Charles Manson probably heard an inner voice, probably many of them, right? And so I just started having this freak out of, like, what if you're just crazy following this inspired voice, right? And so that, for me, was the choice point. Do you listen to love? Do you listen to fear? Fear is often going to sound like practicality. It's often going to sound like the voice of good judgment. It's going to be the voice that says, this is really hard, and you're not going to make it, and you won't make much money, and the economy, that voice, right? Love is going to be the voice that says, but you've never been here before. You have never been here before. Your capacities have never been on this planet before. And so it's going to say, there's a reason this dream is speaking to you. There's a reason this dream, this desire is speaking to you, right? And so for me, that was the choice point, and thankfully, I chose to listen to that voice of strength. So the other thing I want to share with you about this, about, again, why we don't listen to that inspired voice, it's something I teach all my career coaching clients, whether they want to know it or not, is that you can't plan an inspired life. You can't plan an inspired life. That's the problem, right? Our brains are going to be in there trying to figure it out. How is this going to happen? How can I make this happen? And you can't even imagine it. You can't imagine it because it's genius. That's why you can't imagine it. It's inspired. That's why you can't imagine it. But you can follow it moment by moment. You can follow that voice. So for me, what ended up happening, how this played out in my life is, when I finally finished writing this book, I thought, how do I get it in the world? What do you do? How do you get it in the world? And I kept, again, hearing this inner instinct. And it basically said something like, just put it in the river. Just put it in the river, right? And I knew that it probably didn't mean take your manuscript and put it in water, because I was thinking I was at least better than that, I was thinking it wasn't going to be saying that, right? I knew, and I'm a metaphor girl, so I knew it probably meant just put it in the stream of life. Put it out there some way, somehow. Self-publish it if you need to. Print it yourself. Just get it out there. So that's what I decided to do. But it was really scary, because it was like, I don't know anything about marketing. I don't know anything about distribution. Now I'm putting my own money into this. It's like, oh my God, this is kind of scary. But, I decided I'd followed that inner voice this whole time. I'm going to follow it. I'm going to do this. And here's the deal. The second that you decide to really follow your dream, your inner voice, your genius, the second you decide to do that, you will meet the most judgmental person 3 seconds later. It's a law of the universe. I don't know why, right? You know what I mean. So I don't know why. I went to an ex-boyfriend's house. I went to a Passover dinner. I sat down next to this woman, and she was my mother on steroids. She just started grilling me. So you're going to publish a book, and you know nothing about marketing, and you know nothing about distribution, and you're putting your own money into this. You are very ambitious, right? Which is code, right? For you're a nut, step away from my kids. And so, I think, what do I tell this woman is my plan? What do I tell her? Do I tell her I'm going to put it in a river? Do I tell her this? Do I tell her, don't worry, I've been hearing an inner voice for 12 years. It's very nice. Right? That's the problem with genius, right? That's the problem with doing something alternative or inspired. It's not normal, right? So I'm going to get to the good part of this story. I finally self-published the book. I finally put it into the world, and it started moving through word of mouth. It hit the Denver Post bestseller list. It hit the business bestseller list. It was just moving. And then 4 months after I self-published the book, I got an email out of the blue that literally said, your fairy godmother has arrived. Your fairy godmother has arrived, right? I thought, you're going to open it up and it's going to be spam, right? It's going to be Russian girls are waiting for you. There's money for you in Nairobi. Just give us your credit card number, But hey, desperate people do desperate things, so I opened the email. And I read it, and it was from a vice president of marketing and publicity from Random House. And she had somehow found my self-published book. And she wrote and said, this is the best book I have ever read on finding your calling, living your passion. She was in a career transition, and she said, oh my God, I love this book. I want to get it to a major New York house. And she did. She got it to the publisher that I had always, always dreamed of. It's Tarcher, part of Penguin. It was one of the largest houses. She got it to the president of the company. It was amazing. And they ended up buying the book. Let me say that again, they bought the book. It was so cool. They bought the book, they kept the exact same writing of, they made me edit like 10 sentences out of the whole thing. They kept my title, it was This Time I Dance. They kept the same exact title. They kept the purple print. They kept everything. I would never have ended up where I ended up had I followed a conventional path. As an unknown author, I would never have ended up the way that I did if I had followed the conventional wisdom. But that's what I mean when I say you can't plan an inspired life. You can't plan that. How am I going to know that, I'll have a meltdown for 12 years. Oh, I hope I didn't screw up with the mic. I'm going to have a meltdown for 12 years. Some other woman's going to have a meltdown at the end of 12 years. We're going to hook up. That's my business plan. Right? What bank is going to go, sounds great to us, let's sign off on that, Miss Kieves. Right? So it's like, you can't plan an inspired life, but you have that voice in you. Every single one of us has this strand of genius and this strand of capacities within us that we are being asked to give at this time. So the conversation I want to have with you, or what I want to ask you, is what would you be doing if you weren't listening to conventional wisdom, if you weren't listening to predictable strategies, if you weren't listening to your fear? What desire would you follow? What love do you want to express? What gift do you want to give this planet? That's what I want to ask you. And I think we are living in unprecedented, crazy times of unbelievable change. But I think every one of us has that inspired voice. Every one of us has something to contribute to this dream, something to contribute to this planet. So I ask you to continue that conversation with me at tamakieves.com. And I want to leave you with one of my all-time favorite quotes. It's from Mary Oliver, and it says, all my life, when I leave, all my life, I want to say, I was a bride married to amazement. Thank you so much.